Hello and welcome to OMED 2020, the virtual meeting. My name is Hunter Alexander, and I'll be presenting today on submitting your paper to the JAOA and handling revision requests. I'm the Senior Publishing Editor of the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association. So your study is complete. You've done the research, you've gathered your co-authors, and you're ready to write. Now what? What are the first steps you should take? Well, the first questions you and your co-authors should consider when you're preparing your manuscript for submission to the journal, to the JAOA, is what type of article do we envision this being, and in what section do we intend for it to be published? Listed here are the article types that the JAOA receives and publishes: original article, review article, brief report, case report, clinical and clinical practice and clinical image, commentaries, and letters to the editor. And then subject matter. Here are the subject topics that you can consider submitting to when you submit your paper to the JAOA: behavioral health, cardiopulmonary medicine, general innovations, and so on, medical education, all the way down there through pediatrics and public health and primary care. So what are the difference between the various article types? Well, to be perfectly honest, every article type has a different set of required elements. What I'm going to focus on here today are the required elements for some of the more frequently submitted article types, and those would be original articles, brief reports, review articles. However, information for everything is available on the journal's website at the URL listed here. You can also go to jaoa.org. One of the first drop downs will be authors, and that will take you to that page. But this presentation will focus on these three article types. So the required formatting structure for original articles, brief reports, and review articles is identical. And original articles and brief reports are identical in the way that the data is reported. If you look at the asterisk there, you're wondering, what is the difference? Why have two separate article types, original articles and brief reports? Brief reports document early phase investigations or smaller pilot studies, while original articles are longer term, larger patient populations on a larger scale. In layman's terms, brief reports, smaller or early term, shorter term results; original articles, larger patient populations, larger number of participants, and longer term follow-up. I would say that's the long and short of it. Review articles include systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and narrative reviews. Getting into that is a little bit beyond the scope of the presentation today. However, Melissa Schmidt, our executive director of the journal, recently recorded a fantastic webinar that goes into very, very nice depth and great information about those various types of review articles. The YouTube link is there. You can also find it on the front page of the journal's website. So all three of these, original articles, brief reports, and review articles, from a formatting standpoint, they're identical, like I mentioned before. Structured abstract, which means the following 5 sections: context, objective, methods, results, and conclusion. And then again, in the main text, same 5 main sections. You, of course, can have subheaders within the sections, and we'll get into that in a bit later. But introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusions. So let's go one by one through the sections, the required elements, what we're looking for on the journal side, and hopefully this will assist you as you prepare your article, you write it up for submission. Introduction section. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. You should briefly introduce the topic of your manuscript. Background, describing the previous work that led to this research. Description of the question and domain of inquiry, and then a brief outline of the goals of the study. Introduction section should be relatively brief, couple paragraphs, couple pages. Anything beyond that, a lot of the information more likely should be put in the discussion section, where you review relevant literature and discuss how your study would fit in. But for right now, let's focus on the introduction. You really just want to briefly introduce the study and why you conducted it. Moving to the methods section, essentially what you need to do is clearly describe the study's methodology. How was it conducted? When was it conducted? Where? And by whom? In a way that it could be replicated by a reader, if only by reading the paper. Everything needs to be as clear as can be. And I've listed a few bullet points for all method sections that you should either address, you should describe in full, or describe perhaps why it wasn't undertaken, such as IRB approval. If it was approved, we need to locate, or excuse me, the name of the approving IRB. If IRB approval was not required, please describe why not. Even if it seems obvious to you, if it, no human subjects were included in the study, just include it. It's helpful to the reader. It's a matter of completeness. If human subjects were included, was written informed consent acquired from them? Were their patients or subjects consecutive? Or were any inclusion exclusion criteria applied? The study's date range, months and years. For example, March 15th through July 2018, rather than saying, from 2015 to 18, we need the detail. We need to know months and years, and describe in detail any mechanism of randomization. You can't just say the patients were randomized. We assigned them to group by randomization. We need to know how. Was it done with a computer program? Was block randomization used? Whatever it was, we need you to tell us and describe more detail. Not just say it, but describe it in detail, please. Moving on, still in the methods section, did your study utilize a survey or questionnaire? If so, you should provide a blank copy of it for the readers, reviewers, editors to have as a guide, and include the following information within the text itself. Who designed the survey? Include the author's initials. How was the survey or questionnaire distributed? Was it done in person? Was it done over the phone, via email, online? Was another service used, something similar to SurveyMonkey? And if it was done in person, I think it's important to note who distributed to them. Was it you, the lead author? Was it an office staff member? Was it a nurse in your practice? I think it's important to understand exactly how the information gathered on the survey was gathered. When was it first distributed, and then when was it closed? Essentially, like when was, if a program like SurveyMonkey was used, if an email went out on March 1st and the patient didn't get to it till March 20, were they still open? Was it still open to them? We need to know when it was open to the patients to complete, how many times was it distributed, and at what intervals. Again, this mostly applies to online surveys or emailed surveys. And were any reminders sent to those who didn't initially respond? Was it completed anonymously, or were the subjects identified on them? I think that's a really, really important thing to include in your method section. And again, how many were sent and how many were completed? What we're getting at here is the response rate. Obviously, very, very important information to include in your method section. Moving on to if a literature search was conducted as part of the study, the following information must be described in the method section. What database or databases were used, what keywords or search string were used. Again, inclusion, exclusion criteria applied to the search, no studies before 1990, for example. Who conducted it, author initials again. When was it conducted, month and year. Who reviewed the results? Oftentimes, of course, it is the same author who conducts the search and reviews the results, but sometimes multiple authors will come in and review the results. And in those cases, how are disagreements between the authors resolved? When you're putting together a literature search, you don't include everything that comes in. You have to go through and decide what gets included in the study, in the final, grouping of studies that you reviewed. How were disagreements handled between the authors is what I'm getting at. Moving to the results section. Briefly, you need to clearly report everything that, all the outcome data. Nothing should be reported in the results that wasn't introduced earlier in the method section. And along the same lines, nothing that was described in the methods or mentioned as a study objective in the abstract should go unreported. Anytime you present a numeral, please include the corresponding percentage and vice versa. For supporting of their literature search, if you conducted one, or survey data should be included. And the best way to do this, honestly, it may be as a separate table or pie charts or graphs, depending on the number of questions or the nature of your survey. But you can't just, if a survey has 15 questions, you can't only report 2 or 3 answers of your choosing. We need to have all the answers, whether it's as a supplemental appendix, if there are a ton of questions, or as in tabular form, whatever suits your study best. But we need to have all the results available to the readers and reviewers and editors. And if there are human subjects included in the study, we need to know demographic information. age, BMI, both mean and range, follow-up data, when have you last seen the patients, and any complications that were encountered along the way. Discussion section would be next, and this is where you place your findings in the context of relevant literature and also make recommendations for future research. That's pretty broad, so hopefully the 3 bullet points below will help. We really needed what you should be describing here, how your study differs from, enhances, or contributes to the knowledge base. Essentially, why is this study important? We've gotten how you conducted it in the method section. We've got the results in the results section. Now the discussion section really is the why. Why do your results matter? What is the benefit that this study is going to make to the knowledge base? The limitations of the study, just as important, even though I know this isn't always the most fun thing to write up. We really need you to acknowledge and fully address any potential limitations to the study. Some of those could be if patients completed a survey, they didn't complete it anonymously, small sample size, lack of randomization, anything like that. Even if you don't think it really impacted the power of the study, that your conclusions are still strong, lack of randomization or short-term follow-up results or anything like that, just acknowledge, address. It makes your study more powerful, even though it seems a bit counterintuitive. And importantly, considering the JAOA and the scope of the journal, you really need to comment on the study's importance in relation to the tenets of osteopathic medicine. How will this impact DOs in particular? What is the why is this article of utmost importance to the practicing DO? Moving on to the conclusion section, to the wrap up of the paper, this should not be more than a paragraph. It really, if you've done your job in the previous sections, you've laid out the methodology, results, discussion, clearly, how it fits into the literature. The conclusion section really should be a single paragraph, a brief summary of the major findings, how they relate to the stated objective from earlier in your abstract, and again, a brief rundown of the clinical applications of those findings if it's appropriate. We don't want a rehash of the results section. That's not what the conclusion section's for, but it's just a place for you to briefly summarize the major findings and the main takeaways for the reader. A little bit of general advice, guidance, information. Again, this link was earlier in the presentation, but all of this information and much, much more is at the JAOA's online instructions for authors page. That link is there in the first bullet point, including the required elements I've covered here, plus many, many more. References, ensure they're listed in sequential order at first mention, and also formatted in AMA style. A link to AMA style is in our instructions for authors. High quality figures, easily understood tables are a huge benefit to the readers. Oftentimes, results section, if you just have tons of numerals, tons of percentages in there, it's a bit much. It's overwhelming to the reader. Break it into a table, but make it easily understood. I mean, if it doesn't make sense, if it's tough for you to understand as an author, it's going to be very, very nearly impossible for the reader to understand. Make it easy to understand, even if it seems like overkill. And along the same lines, videos are an excellent supplement to articles. Short, 5 to 60-second videos, just whether you're showing a technique that you're describing in the text, or pre and post photos of a patient, anything like that, can greatly enhance the reader experience and will make your article more interactive. Anything that you have included in your article, whether it's a previously published table or graph or anything of that nature, permission from the copyright holder has to be acquired, written permission from the copyright holder, I should note. And along the same lines, if there are any photographs of a patient or a description of a patient in a paper where they could be identifiable, and I guess that would most likely be a case report or a clinical image paper, a signed consent form must be provided from the patient. A word about figures. This is just a quick note showing how bold and black text looks so much better than gray text. I mean, this is same information on the left to the right. It's a little sample graph I created just for this presentation, but take the extra time, make your graphics look high quality, and make the text a little bit larger than you think, because when it goes onto the page, they won't be as large as they look on your computer screen. So large text, black text, and bold colors. There's no sense in just going with whatever MS Word provides you. Take the extra time and make your graphs aesthetically pleasing. I think it's one of those things that takes a good article and makes it even better to the reader. So just take the extra minute or two, 5 even, and make your graphs look as great as possible. And if you need to, bring in a co-author to help you if you don't feel like this is your strong suit. So how do I actually submit my paper? You've got it written, you've got beautiful graphs, you've got permission from your patients, you've got, you got an accompanying video. Now what do? You go here, you go to Scholar One, which is our online editorial system. Link here in my presentation, but also you can find it on our website, on the journal's website, JAOA.org. If you've never submitted to or reviewed for the journal in the past, you'll be required to set up an account. Don't worry, it's really, really simple. You just need your name, contact info, and area of interest. It should take you less than a minute to get set up. And then you will go here. This screen you see on the right is the screen you see when you log in. See the circled author queue there at the top. You'll click that, and then start new submission is the next prompt. And from there, you just go stepwise through the system. It's pretty user-friendly. It really is. It'll take you through the system step by step. However, you can always contact the editorial office, the email there on the screen, if you have any questions or trouble during the submission process. Okay, you've submitted your paper. It underwent peer review, and it's been returned to you for revisions. Now what do? Well, first thing you should do is celebrate. You should be happy. Not all submissions, not all manuscripts are sent back for revision. In fact, many journals reject the vast majority. Well over 3/4 of submissions at some journals are rejected. So the fact that you got a revision letter, a decision letter of revise, that should be encouraging. So on the flip side, I fully understand that it may seem discouraging to receive a long list of revision requests, some of which might require extra research or significant reworking of the study. I totally get that. But it's important to remember that the issues raised by the reviewers, questions they pose, comments they've made about your paper, they're not intended to frustrate you or irritate you or be a bother. In fact, they're actually intended to improve the quality of your work. Both this paper, the paper you're working on currently, and your future research. Take their guidance and use it moving forward. So I definitely understand that a long list of revision requests is not ideal. It's not the most fun thing to get, but take it in the spirit in which it's intended. They're trying to improve your work, and that is a good thing. That's actually a terrific thing, and it'll improve this paper, it'll improve your future work. If the revision requests seem daunting, if it's such a long list, requires a lot of extra work, don't try to do it in a single sitting. Don't do it in a single day. Take your time. Of course, this journal, all journals, we want to receive, if we've sent back for revision, we're interested in your work, we want to receive the revised version as quickly as possible. However, just take it in stages, and that way you won't get burned out, you won't get too frustrated, and ultimately I think the finished product will be better. So formatting your revised manuscript. When you get the decision letter, there'll be these 2 points plus, underneath our editor-in-chief signature will be the actual comments and questions from the reviewers. However, these 2 points I really want to emphasize because they're of extreme importance. You have to utilize the track changes feature within MS Word when revising your manuscript. If you don't know how to do that, you can ask the editorial office or ask somebody else in your office or someone else in your department at your university or college. Doing this will allow our editors to see what's been changed, and we have to have that. We have to know what you did, like what you've revised. So revised manuscript, we can't proceed unless we have a version of your revision with track changes. The second thing I want to emphasize is that you have to respond to each revision request by number, because they will be numbered in the decision letter in the author's response section available to you within Scholar One. This will be very evident to you as you submit your revised manuscript, again, as you're led stepwise through the process, and I'll show you how to do that again in just a moment. But this point-by-point response will allow our editors to understand how you modified the manuscript according to the requests. that way we know that you considered all the comments and questions from the decision letter and took them into consideration as you revised the manuscript. One thing, I don't have it on bullet point here, but I think I should mention, if you disagree with a comment or question in the decision letter, that is fine. Maybe the reviewer or editor missed something, or you see it from a different angle, or it wasn't clearly explained in the original submission. That's not the end of the world. Just clearly explain why you didn't, why you did things the first way, or why you didn't make an adjustment according to the reviewer's comment or question. Explain yourself. It's fine. It happens. So, but this is the point where this is the portion of the process where you can, rebut, a brief, professional rebuttal to the reviewer or editor's comments or questions. Submitting it's very similar to submitting the original version of your paper, but again, once you take your time, revise your manuscript using the track changes feature and make your point-by-point response letter. And then we're going back to the same website. This is the same URL for Scholar One. You're going to click on the same author tab near the top of the screen. However, this time you're going to click Manuscripts Awaiting Revision rather than Start New Submission, which makes sense. And again, you'll just be led through the process. It's a very user-friendly system, I promise. But if you have any questions, concerns, please reach out. This is the journals inbox, editorial@osteopathic.org, and I can be reached personally directly at halexander@osteopathic.org. And I just want to thank you personally for watching this, taking the time to watch and listen, and also for choosing to submit your work to the journal. We really look forward to receiving it and working with you and promoting it together online through the association's channels and the journal's social media channels. And we look forward to receiving it and working together. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the meeting and rest of your day.